Hello, and welcome to Sunchaser. My name is Avinal, and Sunchaser is my project where I try to chase that which makes us wiser, healthier, and wealthier. This time we are talking about the book Think Faster, Talk Smarter by Matt Abrahams. Abrahams is a lecturer at the Stanford Graduate School of Business where he teaches classes on effective communication. Abrahams is also the host of the podcast Think Fast, Talk Smart, a podcast that I have been listening to for quite some time. It provides me useful tips to communicate better and, more importantly, understand other people's viewpoints better. This book provides us tried and tested techniques to speak more confidently, more clearly when we are put on the spot, when we're speaking extemporaneously. I think this is a very valuable skill to learn in today's day and age where we are inundated with so much content, with so much messaging, either on social media or on various websites that we visit, or even on the YouTube videos that we watch. Everyone seems to be trying to grab mindshare. And therefore, if you can learn how to speak in a way that really lands your message, that really makes the audience remember you and your message, absolutely. I think that's a superpower. And therefore, Abraham's book is a welcome guide during these times. Let's move on to the core ideas from the book Think Faster, Talk Smarter. Abraham starts us off literally telling us that there's a method to all of this. There's a method that he calls the Think Faster, Talk Smarter method. It has 6 steps, and this book will teach you all of them. Abrahams also tells us that the secret to speaking well extemporaneously is preparation and practice. You would think that those people on the TED Talks that you see are masters of improv, but they've really just prepared and practiced their materials, their punchlines several times before getting on stage. So that's the first thing, that you have to put in the hard work. There's no secret sauce, there's no magic formula. You have to put in the work of those 6 steps in the Think Faster, Talk Smarter method. But over time, this should give you results. I like how Abrahams has a disclaimer that his method will not mean that you'll end up stunning everyone with your wit and erudition at every spontaneous speaking moment, but that it's a tried and true method that is directionally correct. Abraham says, quote, don't abandon everything you already know. Just explore and incorporate an alternate approach, end quote. Absolutely, I would love to do that. Let's start with the first step of the Think Faster, Talk Smarter method, which is calm. Basically, what Abrahams is saying here is that you cannot communicate well if you're stressed each time that you have to speak to an audience. Abrahams calls this an anxiety spiral. You start with some anxiety about speaking in public, and then you make some mistakes. Those mistakes lead to some more anxiety. That leads to some more mistakes, and so on. Hence, the first step, logically, in this 6 step method is to calm your mind. Number one, know that you and your anxiety are not the same thing. You are the witness of your anxiety, not anxiety itself. And if anxiety can come, then it will go too. Number two, face your anxiety fearlessly and honestly. Repeat to yourself why you're feeling anxious, such as, this is an important presentation slash meeting to me. It is natural for me to feel anxious about this. In this way, you create separation between yourself and what you're experiencing. Next, reframe your anxiety as excitement. So instead of saying, I'm feeling anxious, you should say, I'm feeling excited. And say this out loud, because that is when you really start to believe it. Repeating positive affirmations to yourself before going on a speaking session definitely helps, according to Abrahams. Breathing is another important thing. Focus on your breathing. Long, deep belly breaths. Make the exhales twice as long as the inhales. That is 6 seconds versus 3 seconds. And another thing, don't have your body too warm or your mouth too dry. Finally, having generic but at the same time contextually relevant questions ready that you can use to get out of the spotlight for a few moments to regain your composure are very important. Such as, let's say you're giving a presentation to a group and you need to move on to the next stage of your presentation. Now, instead of directly moving on to the next stage, you can introduce contextually relevant questions to the audience, such as, quote, I'd like us to take a moment and think about whether there are other best in class examples that we can emulate instead of reinventing the wheel each time. End quote. So, this was a contextually relevant question that you can pose to the audience to get them thinking. In that way, remove the spotlight away from yourself for a few seconds, the time that you can then use to prepare for your next segment. Basically, you're passing the mic to your audience for a little while. Abrahams also wants you to ask, what's the worst that can happen? And this is the thing that I am not fully in agreement with, because at least my monkey mind loves that question. When I ask it to think what's the worst that can happen, oh, does it really like to present to me very imaginative scenarios? And therefore, to this point, to imagining the worst that can happen, I will advise you to use it with caution. If you have reasonable control over your mind, then I suppose that can help reduce your anxiety. But if you do not have as much control over your mind, if your mind is very good at dreaming up doom scenarios, then maybe don't ask this question quite often, or at least ask it in a safe space until you achieve the ability to control your mind in situations of real importance. But what I do agree with is remembering that the spotlight effect is real. The spotlight effect is a cognitive bias, I want to say. Basically, it's when you think that people are watching you, but they're really not. You think that people are interested in your life, specifically in everything and every little detail that you do, but they're really not. That's why it's called the spotlight effect. You think that the spotlight is on you all the time. It's really not. Nobody is thinking that much about you. And because the spotlight effect is real, that means you are probably overthinking how much your audience is invested in your delivery. Thinking about this will help reduce your anxiety. When you know that the audience is as busy in their own lives and their own problems as you are in yours. A technique to avoid is using filler words. Most people use them in excess, and it really makes them look like fools. Kim Scott, author of Radical Candor, even says this in one of Matt's podcast episodes. A really cool technique that all of us can use to avoid using filler words is to try and end our sentences right at the time that we are out of breath. Abrahams calls this landing the sentence, and I'll admit it requires some practice. But if you are able to structure your delivery in such a way that by the time you're out of breath, you've made the last point that you wanted to make, then there's not enough breath remaining for your ahs and ums. Step two of the 6 step method: let go of all the imaginary exceptions and limitations that you place on yourself. Abrahams wants us to be aware of the heuristics we use during spontaneous communication so that we can suspend them at will. In this context, heuristics mean the unthinking replies that we give to common questions, such as, how do you think the meeting went? When somebody asks us a question like this, we often reply in an automatic way, in an unthinking way. This is not clear communication, according to Abrahams. When we are asked about a meeting or any situation, we should come up with an authentic reply and not something that we have now learned to parrot back after multiple years of practice. Abrahams also tells us that we should not waste time trying to come up with a perfect response to every situation. We should also not waste time trying to come up with a unique combination of words either. It's okay to be mundane. If you use words that your audience will then need to refer a dictionary for, that's counterproductive. Remember, it's not a performance, it's a conversation. You're not looking to bedazzle your audience, but rather to make sure they understand you and that you understand them. Finally, Abrahams tells us that just like the director of a movie, the times that you err during spontaneous talks should be seen as missed takes and not a mistake. This way, you free yourself from ruminating over the event and learn to take lessons from it and move on. Step 3 of 6: redefine. Many of us do engage in low stakes spontaneous speaking several times a day, and we sail through it because we don't freak out about it. Change your mind about high stakes spontaneous speaking by changing your mindset and see yourself sailing through that as well. Basically, we need to move from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Now, the moment I say that, you will remember Carol Dweck's work on mindset. Refer to my lessons from mindset on sunchaser.live to learn more. By cultivating a growth mindset, you start to see your capabilities as fluid and subject to change and improvement. And the gaffes and the stutters that you make in your speaking journey are just that. They're stepping stones for you to becoming a better speaker. This way, you start focusing on the process of improvement rather than ruminating on the outcome. Seeing yourself as a person traveling through the landscape of spontaneous speaking, where the journey is as important as the destination, is a critical unlock in Abrahams's six-step method. Next, from thinking about yourself, you would do better if you started thinking about your audience. Stop thinking about how anxious you feel and how important this meeting is to you, and instead focus on what your audience needs from you. This will make you more directed in your communication. Basically, how do you make this worth their time? Realize that while you're the one speaking, your audience has also decided to listen to you, which means they also want you to succeed. They want you to have a lucid speaking session so that they themselves take away something of value from the time that they're spending. Remember, you and your audience are in this way sitting on the same side of the table. Both of you want the same outcome, which is a great session where both sides understand each other and the next steps are clear to see. Next, from no or yes but to yes and. More relevant for negotiations is this point, or situations where you have to convince someone, but focusing on common ground and the points of agreement, building your speech from there is a good way to go. And finally, move from dwelling on what happened to next play. Basically, don't waste time ruminating about what went wrong. When you're speaking and you end up making a mistake, try to correct that as quickly as possible, especially relevant when you're giving out factual information. And once you've done that, move on to the next step. Next play, as Abrahams calls it. Keep driving the session towards its goal. We are midway through our six-step method, and we have till now discussed about the need for calm, to calm your mind, the requirement to unlock, that is, break free from the unthinking heuristics you may be bringing to your conversations. And we have spoken of the need to redefine, which is changing your mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. The fourth step now is listen. Your audience sends you a bunch of verbal and non-verbal signals that you can pick up to understand them better and communicate better. So this is about being receptive to the signals that your audience is sending you. How do you do this? Number one, slow your pace. Don't rush through the conversation. Don't rush through the presentation like a bullet train. Slow your pace, pace yourself, and in this way, you will be present during the meeting. You'll be present to take in all the cues and signals that your audience is sending you. Number two, make space for reflection. Do not react to feedback in the heat of the moment. Basically, take time with it. Try to understand what is really being said, what is the undercurrent, what is the second order and the third order effect of what is being said, and think about what and how the reaction should be accordingly. Do not react immediately or quickly or harshly, which may make you miss the point of the feedback. Number three, grace. Again, this is about being present in the moment and going with the flow of the conversation instead of fighting it. Many times, and indeed myself included, we see how the conversation is not exactly going according to the plan that we had in mind, not going according to the agenda. But sometimes you may realize that the conversation in changing the agenda is going towards something which is even more important and something even more fundamental than what you had tabled for that meeting. In such cases, be receptive and be graceful in accepting the change of flow of the conversation and use the change of flow to discuss the more important parts that may have come up. And finally, beware of noise. Conducting a meeting in a noisy setting or a distracting setting where the signals that your audience is giving you, the feedback that your audience is giving you could be misunderstood. Conducting the meeting with a lot on your mind already. Both kinds of noise, physiological and psychological, should be avoided to listen better to your audience. Let's move on to step number 5 of 6, structure. Your speaking should have a logical structure to it. It should have a generally defined beginning, middle, and end. The end should contain a call to action. Generally, it's good that your end contain a call to action, a series of next steps along with who is going to do them and when they're supposed to be completed. And your conversation, your discussion, your speech, whatever, should not be too meandering. Turning your speech into a story is especially powerful here because that is what humans remember. We evolved to remember stories and we remember them much better over facts and figures and statistics. If your audience can remember your story, that also means that they can repeat your story. And this is especially important if you are lower down the hierarchy of the organization and your message has to travel through the chain of command. Even when you're asked to speak spontaneously, you can still lay out the structure to your speech. You may have to think about it, but you can still do it on the fly. This is where the previous advice of pacing yourself and taking the conversation in a slow and deliberate manner is especially useful because this way you get time to think about the structure, the beginning, the middle, and the end that you want to take for your speech. A structure helps keep your audience's attention. It helps them remember the important bits. It helps them process information with ease, and it makes it easier for you as the speaker to convey information. There are already several well established general structures to speaking. You may have already heard of a few of these, such as comparison, contrast, conclusion, or problem, solution, benefit, used by marketing people such as myself, or feature, advantage, benefit, again used by marketing people such as myself. There is chronological structure. That is, what was the time in which each event happened? There is a cause and effect structure. Of course, there's the famous STAR structure, the situation, task, action, and result structure, that is. And there is point, reason, example, point, or prep structure. All of these structures help you deliver your message in a better way, in a more organized way to your audience, and therefore help the communication strategy and help them remember your message. Finally, step 6 of 6 in the Think Faster, Talk Smarter method is focus. Don't bore or confuse your audience, like I said, with long words, too many words, long winded sentences, disconnected reasoning, and of course, my personal favorite, jargon monoxide. The big question that you're trying to help your audience answer is why should I care? Always remember this. The audience is there spending their time. And if you can answer this question for them, that is, why should I care? At the end of the conversation, at the end of the presentation, your audience should be able to repeat to you the answer to the question, why should I care? Then you've done your job. And that is not going to happen if you're all over the place. Go beyond what you want them to know and think about how you want them to feel and what you want them to do. This way, you're really making sure that you're answering, or rather, that you're helping them answer the question, why should I care, in a more holistic manner. Knowledge is one part of it, but how do you want them to feel? Do you want them to feel energized? Do you want them to feel hopeful? Do you want them to feel curious? Do you want them to feel a sense of urgency? Do you want them to feel that there's an opportunity ahead of them that they should capitalize on? Think about these things. Only then will your audience remember your message and act on it in a much better way. Focused messaging is the name of the game. Focused messages need to be precise, they should be relevant to the audience, accessible, obviously, that is easy to understand, and concise at the same time. Abrahams, at the end of his book, takes us through several applications to specific questions, several scenarios where these tools are applied, such as small talk, situations where you're introducing people, sales pitches, Q&As, feedback, and even apologies. All of them are very useful. I would encourage you to read the book for these. Those parts at the end of the book are really helpful in seeing the entire 6-step process in action. In closing, the key point of the book, like I mentioned before, is that spontaneous communication need not be the way that you think of it. That is, be spontaneous, really. It can be planned for, it can be prepared for. The concepts mentioned in the book are common sense, if you think about them. But upon reading the book, the reader is reminded about them, more likely to remember and practice them in extemporaneous speaking situations. Again, all of this is good to hear and nice to read, but pretty useless if not done indeed. The book is well structured, obviously, and I enjoyed reading it, but action is what is required. Implementation is what is required to get the most out of the book. There are several try it sections in the middle of chapters that help you put all of this in practice, that help you walk the talk, that help you practice what you're learning. And of course, like I mentioned, the 6 commonly faced scenarios that the author takes us through at the end of the book are a must read for anyone to see how these concepts, principles, and practice to speaking better extemporaneously can be applied to real life scenarios. Absolutely recommended book for speaking better for anyone in a job that requires them to speak, that requires them to communicate better, that requires them to communicate clearly, that even requires them to lead a team of people. Do pick up this book if you're interested in learning more about the Think Faster, Talk Smarter method. And until next time, Sunchaser.